So people are doing this from different aspects. We just found a gap for people who lost use of their hands. They're not paralyzed to a chair. They can move around all day. And they just want to use not only that one device, but a variety of devices all day for communication, education, and play. And that's what we decided to focus on.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. 20-Minute Leaders is a proud supporter of Make-A-Wish Israel and Tech to Peace, and is in proud collaboration with Secret Chord Ventures, J Ventures, Riverside FM, Fusion VC, Birthright Excel, J Impact, Leap, Google for Startups, and Hippo, and in media partnership with CTech. Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Today, I'm honored to be hosting Miri Berger here at Google for Startups, talking about how we can leverage technology to bring mobility and fine motor skills to people who may have lost them. Miri is the founder and CEO of 6Degrees. She's an industrial designer by training, completed a master's degree from the Pratt Institute, and a B.F.A in ceramic design from the Bezalel Academy of Arts. She holds patents for her work in design and has over 15 years of experience in a wide variety of projects in the fields of toys, furniture, electronics, and soft goods. Miri specializes in designing products that consider unconventional needs, materials, and uses. Welcome, Miri. Miri Berger, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much for having me over.
You're working on something so special, 6Degrees. We're talking about motion, and we're talking about smart motion, the integration of the physical and digital world, making some pretty tremendous positive impact on people that really need it. Take me back a little bit to who you are and how this sort of came up for you 5 years ago when you co-founded 6Degrees.
Well, to understand what happened 5 years ago, I normally start with the actual origin story. I met my husband at 19 while we were both serving in the military. My husband got injured. He's my husband now. I just met him then. He had gotten injured a month earlier, a nerve injury to his leg as a paratrooper. And coming from family physicians, this led to introducing him to a neurosurgeon, which led to physical therapy and rehabilitation, which actually has never stopped since. And as he found himself, and I found myself with him in rooms with other 18 to 22-year-olds going through rehab that got injured in their limbs, their hands, their legs, we found that past physical pain, the second thing that hits you is loss of independence, and it also stays with you. And that really stayed with us emotionally, conceptually, but also physically for him throughout our entire life together. Fast forward 15 years later, we're married. We're both at school. I'm at Pratt doing industrial design. He's at NYU running the innovation lab. And we met it again with a lecturer who lost his dominant hand. And we really wanted, starting with him, but then it grew into a larger population to connect people who lost the use of their hands back to communication, technology, and employment. But to do that with the guidance of independence.
Wow.
So that's how we kind of started 6Degrees. We both finished school 5 years ago. I was already working in design consultancy. We both decided we want to do this in Israel. So I left my job in Brooklyn. We took our 2 kids and 2 pieces of suitcase and came to Israel and started the company. Incredible.
And so we're talking about people with disabilities or with lack of mobility in their upper limbs being able to be independent. That is the basic premise. And so how does technology provide any support here? What are some of the ways that we can leverage technology to do that?
Yeah, so and I'll start with what we do, but I can obviously zoom out to what's going on in the ecosystem. So we started with people who lost their fine motor skills. This means they can't use their hands because of injury, paralysis, or disease. Normally focused on finger motion, finger movement. And this affects, how you use a mouse, how you would tap a touchscreen, how you play a game with a controller and so on, let's say on Xbox. Mm-hmm. And so what we wanted to do is to take the output, meaning the command on the side of the device, but replace the action with motion. So instead of you clicking a mouse, you would move your arm. You can twist it, make a whipping motion, a fist bump, or lift your shoulder, and that'll correspond to the computer as a click, or to the phone as a tap, and so on. And so we also decided to do this focusing on individual motion because, as you know, everyone's unique. To quantify it a little more, we started out by putting 30 people with no mobility issues in a room and asked them to put on the device to gather data and to do the same motion. And the commonality between them was less than 30%, meaning people are vastly different in the way that they move, and even in micro motions. And so we knew that we had to develop a technology or an algorithm to kind of accommodate to that and let everybody use their existing motion, their existing ability, not looking at the disability, but looking at what you can do. In order to get back to using the digital world.
Incredible.
And talking about the ecosystem, what's going on is a lot of people are doing this from different aspects. So that means if you can move your eyes, technology developed tracks your eyes and uses that as a guidance for control. If you can move your head, it's the same thing. There are technologies that focus on muscle potential, meaning you make you flex your muscle and that sends a little electrical pulse. Further, or cameras that we all experience that through tracking your body shape and so on. So people are doing this from different aspects. We just found a gap for people who lost use of their hands. They're not paralyzed to a chair. They can move around all day, and they just want to use not only that one device but a variety of devices all day for communication, education, and play. And that's what we decided to focus on.
We're probably a little underestimating as a society the role of fine motor skills, especially with our hands, right? We constantly talk about opposable thumbs as sort of the bread and butter of what differentiates us, and but I think we underestimate what happens when you lose that fine motor skill, right? It's not just if you're in a wheelchair that you're lacking independence, but it's something like that. So what is the product that 6Degrees is working on to tackle this?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So we developed a product called MyMove, which is a off-the-shelf hardware, meaning the same technology exists in other smartwatches that you know today or in phones. But this hardware in our product is layered with an algorithm that looks at motion. So basically, you can take MyMove. It looks kind of like a generic wearable smartwatch. You can place it on your wrist and the watch area on the upper arm or on your leg. So basically any limb that can move. We asked you to do a 5-minute onboarding through playing a game.
5 minutes?
5 minutes. We start out by asking where you place the device. Then we asked you to turn on Bluetooth so you can connect it to the computer, phone, tablet. Then we ask you to play a 5-minute game. And throughout that 5-minute game, we look at your motion, range, ability, speed, accuracy, whether you have involuntary motion like tremor. In other words, we just ask you to stay still and see what that looks like. And through that, we kind of build a library of basically 720 different aspects of the way that you move.
Wow.
And we do that in 80 samples a second, meaning really, really fast. So every time you move or don't move, we add that to the algorithm, and that teaches the algorithm about you specifically. After that 5 minutes, you can now take that Bluetooth connection with no program installed, no extra hardware like a dongle or a camera. You just turn on your Bluetooth, find the MyMove device on that on your Bluetooth computer, phone, tablet, and connect, and you can start going.
And so at that moment, you're able to effectively exert fine motor skills on your smart device without actually exerting fine motor skills on the device.
Yeah, from that moment on, we take the motion that you chose as a command. You can think of it as a gesture.
Sure.
And that gesture is going to be an action on the corresponding device. So if you chose, let's say, a fist bump motion, then that fist bump will be a right click or a left click on your computer. It'll also be a tap or a swipe on your phone, or it can be the X button or the Y button on your controller, gaming controller. And you moving right, left, up, and down the way that you do will be the corresponding motion, of the mouse moving on the screen, the cursor, moving on the screen, or the joystick that you would use on a gaming controller.
Interesting.
And then you can basically use that to get back to full function.
And so now I understand the importance of the precision that you were talking about before, the training the model specifically from your own actions that feeds itself, and to be able to have very precise identification of what gestures you're making, because it's very easy to confuse this with this, right?
Yeah.
And so you want to make sure that you're getting it exactly right, because that could be the difference of sending the email or not sending the email. In our cases.
Sure.
Now, when you talk to me a little bit about the creation of the product, I'm always really curious about those types of things with hardware, the physical world. How do you even approach a process like this as a designer yourself? How do you think through building the product from the consumer's perspective, their experience, their market education that needs to come to this? I'd love to hear it all.
So obviously, this is an iterative process. It was learn, correct, repeat, and so on throughout the lifetime of the company. But I'm a really big believer in inclusion by design. And so we started out picking the ends of the spectrum, meaning people who can move too much or too little as the models for the algorithm, for the technology. And we know that through designing for those ends, we cover the middle. And we started out by thinking of really simple things like how to use your phone. You use it lying down, sitting up, walking, on a train. And if you think of, say, the thing that reads speed on your phone, the accelerometer, then if you're wearing something with an accelerometer and you're in a car or a train, that comes into effect. Let's say camera devices that you know today, the Wii, doesn't really capture you lying down on the bed and chilling. So we really started thinking about where people would use this device throughout the day, and then we asked them to use it, which is the obvious next step. But you see a lot of technologies being developed, and kind of when they're done, the user comes in. I think it's really important to have that iterative process with the user right in the beginning. I always call our users the company employee that you never meet in the office, because they're really, really important. Their feedback, their input is really critical to get a good, technology or product out there.
What was the process sort of trivial from a planning perspective? I mean, did you sort of understand the problem because you've had those personal experiences and you were subjected to them? So you understood a little bit what the pain points were and how you built the confidence, because part of it is not just regaining those skills, but also regaining the confidence that you can have those fine motor skills, especially on these things that are generally, we think of them as very, very fast, quick-paced actions.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I would love to say I planned everything in the beginning, but that would be incorrect. We actually started, as I said, making this product for one individual. This individual had an amputation below the elbow and was wearing a prosthetic. And we started out by looking at the user as someone who wears a prosthetic. And this individual was also a CAD designer, a computer modeling expert, a teacher. And so we wanted to have this function in CAD, in a computer. And then as we asked other wounded veterans in the U.S. as well as wounded veterans in Israel if they want to try it, they said, well, I have a friend with MS. I have an aunt who has tremor. I have a cousin that has nerve injury and can't really put anything on their skin. Can we put this on clothing? And so every question, so it started out by looking at a problem and trying to adapt a solution. And then that solution kind of grew into, an at request development. So we wanted to help as many people as possible. So we were looking at, when someone came with tremor, we're like, that's great. We can add this aspect to the algorithm and have them read the tremor and see how that works. And so it was an evolving process.
How do you decide, where to go from here with 6Degrees? I mean, there's so many different things that you can do, right? How do you sort of think through the prioritization or the rationalization of what are the right features to be building out or the right products, the next my move, if you will, to be built out? What does this process for you look like?
Yeah, so I mean, until this point, I kind of focused on technology, but I think when you're building a company, you have to also take the business aspect and the vision or the mission into account. So in our case, our vision and mission was to start out by including the people that we service, people who lost their fine motor skills or dexterity, throughout their accommodating their use of technology throughout the day. That could be when they're using their media console in a car. It could be when they're using their smart devices to communicate. That could be at work. It could be in a presentation. It could be in a variety of aspects. So I think the first thing that we look at when we choose where to go next, we're looking at our population. Mm-hmm. Secondly, you have to look at the end game, the vision. And for us, it's for this technology or this user experience to be embedded in any wearable device. So you don't need my move. You can take the algorithm embedded in any smartwatch to allow anyone to do this. You don't have to have an injury or a disability in order to use this. And I think that's part of having this inclusive, that anyone is, is on a level playing field. So that is another guidance. And the third is really what is the path in order to accelerate that, these steps moving up. So our path is we just started selling my move in April in the U.S., focused mainly, but also in Australia and Brazil. And I'm happy to say that we're actually selling it to assistive technology libraries, to universities to get, students back to school or to education, but also writing their project and doing their graphics by themselves. And we're selling it to corporates in order to get employees not only with a severe or visible disability, but also someone who can be a programmer and suffers from carpal tunnel syndrome and can go to work because of that, momentarily or for a few months. And so we started hitting those verticals, which are still under the mission, but can grow the company to the next stage.
So I'm hearing that primarily from a go-to-market until now, there was a lot of different businesses that are taking interest in this for the different people that are within, whether it's students in universities, employees in companies, etc. Mm-hmm. Is there a specific reason why you found that B2B is the strong approach here now versus then going after the consumer market? Because obviously anybody that has fine motor issues, this is something that's hugely relevant for them and also in their daily lives, not just in work.
Yeah, and that's a great question. For us, we looked at what other companies did and kind of weighed the how fast this would reach the end consumer or the end user going through the company versus going through the end user first. And so we reached out to these organizations, the AT programs, the businesses, the corporates, and the AT programs, the businesses, and the universities, because they take care of the financing. They purchase the device, they give it to the end user to use for a few months, weeks, days, and so on, or semesters. And so in that case, the end user can try this out risk-free and really gather the benefit and the value. And we see that as a starting point to grow this. So you can really, it's a new technology. The market doesn't really know about it. Right. And we thought it would be best for the end user not to be the purchaser and not to pay for it, but only to gain the value. And it's important to say that it's not only for the end user, it's also for their surrounding family, friends. Their company benefits from this. The university benefits from this because they access a lot more people. So it's really, you think of it as like, the drop, but then the wave that comes after.
Right. Now, you mentioned that you and your husband sort of picked up your whole family, finished your jobs, and came here to start this. So it sounds like you had such a deep and meaningful personal conviction as to where you're going here. Do you feel that in the day-to-day? In looking back, do you feel the what you were hoping to feel working on 6Degrees?
I think having a startup is amazing. It doesn't mean that all of you should go out and start one. It's also very difficult. There are a lot of adversities. You keep learning new skills and basically facing new challenges every single day. Obviously, everyone faces challenges every day, but in the case of a startup, you're facing a challenge and you have to kind of address how that challenge would affect the customers you sell to, your investors, your employees, yourself, your family, and you have to do that every kind of minute, every time that happens, over and over again. So on one hand, it's difficult because of the challenge, and the other, it's rewarding because once somebody comes with feedback and says, you got me to this place, or you had me, doing something independently, you reduced pain, you took a burden from someone, and you get that, you get those trinkles not every day, but every once in a while, And you look at it, and it normally comes in parallel to kind of a challenge that you're tackling. And at that moment, that challenge becomes really miniature. It really reduces it to, okay, I'll solve this so I can get the next one. So for us, an impact-based business is really what we wanted to start and what we're building. And I love having it.
So it sounds like this why that you have is so strong that it just overcomes a lot of these other challenges that you meet in the day-to-day.
Yeah, it's kind of like a beacon that you can follow. And if you're, on one hand, it keeps you focused and you're vertical in your business, and on the other, it keeps you focused on why you're there doing it. Because otherwise, there's no really reason to start a startup. You basically you pay someone to work. So until a certain point. So and you work many hours, and it's always a cost reward kind of scale. Sure. Because you're always losing out on things, but you're also gaining a lot incrementally.
I have here on your website open, and I have the video rolling, and it's just so cool watching how people are leveraging very simple movements that, from what you said before, are very unique to them. They're very precise to their own interpretation of those movements and those actions, and they're able to go anything from Photoshop a cat to open up a browser to play game to flip through a slideshow to edit an image. It's just so cool, and I can only think about going back to what you were mentioning before, realizing that right after the disability itself, it's the second hardest thing there is losing the independence.
Yeah.
That this is something that's not trivial, right? Losing independence, now understand that we're not able to do what we were doing before. And regaining autonomy, at least in the digital sphere, which is where most of our jobs are anyways today. I think that's a pretty incredible impact that you're making. So thank you for the amazing work, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Miri, this is a great journey, and I look forward to continuing following 6 Degrees.
Yeah, and I continue looking forward to listening to this and seeing where other people are impacting the world. Thank you so much for having me over.
Thank you.